guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Lola, and this video is the second part of the Preparing for Uni mini-series. I start uni as a sophomore in about a week from now, but there are still so many things I need to do before classes start, so I decided to make this video for those of you who are starting uni this year and are looking for advice on how to survive your first year at uni. I have a list of points I want to cover in this video, so I decided to split them into 3 sections: academics, social life, and balancing your finances. So let's get to it. First up is academics. My first point in academics is that failure is okay. I know that you guys have probably heard from your high school teachers that college is going to be very different from high school and that it's going to be so hard and that professors are going to be unforgiving about you turning in your work late. That's not true. I mean, it does depend on your professor, but in general, professors are really chill. I feel like professors just see you more as a person. But I will say that college is different from high school in the sense of, I feel like in high school, or at least in my experience, everything is kind of handed to you. When you're listening to a lesson in class, your teacher tells you exactly what you need to know about this and what you need to know about that, depending on the course. They're more specific, especially if you have that class for the entire school year, not just one semester. But in contrast, in college, I found that professors don't really do that. Professors are mainly just there to teach you the basic concepts and ideas that you need to understand within their field of study. But as a student, it's your job to make connections between those basic concepts and different areas of expertise surrounding the entire core subject that you're learning in that specific course, which if you didn't have any experience with this in high school or prior to college, you may find it a little hard to fully integrate yourself into a college level type of class, especially because a lot of these main lectures for, let's say, a STEM class or a literature class, they tend to be larger. They tend to be lectures with around 200 to 300 people, just depending on your class size. And because everyone has very specific questions, it's very hard for the professor to answer everyone's question within the limited time that they have to teach. I know that if you've been in a competitive and academically competitive environment throughout all of your academic life, I know that it can be hard to find yourself struggling and needing help in certain areas. Asking for help or struggling is seen as a sign of weakness almost, which is really weird because if you need help, you need help. There's nothing wrong with needing help. Your professors don't expect you to know every single thing about their topic. These are subjects that they've studied all their life. So don't feel afraid to ask for help, but also don't be afraid to fail. Trust me, I have experienced my first few failures, and while it was really hard to grapple with the fact that I wasn't the perfect all-A student that I used to be in high school, I was also able to learn from those failures, and that is what's most important. You will fail. You're not going to be perfect at everything that you learn in college or everything that you attempt in college, but the idea is that you pick yourself up from those failures and you're able to learn from them. If you're not able to grapple with the fact that you have failed and you're still wallowing in that sense of, oh, I'm a failure, there's no way you can improve. Trust me, it sucks, but when you look back at yourself in 4 years after you graduate, or however long it does take you to graduate, you will truly be amazed with how much you have improved. You're going to be so nervous about making all of these mistakes, but trust me, for the long run, you'll be very grateful for all of those mistakes that you've made because you've learned from them and now you can perfect what you've already been taught. And that goes into my second point, asking for help. Last fall, I took an inorganic chemistry class. I took that class in my first test. I bombed. I was so distraught because I've never struggled in any science class. So when I went into inorganic chemistry, I was pretty confident because of my background knowledge in chemistry. But then when I failed that test, I was so distraught and I was I don't know what to do. Plus the labs were really complex. So when I was struggling making these lab reports, doing all these calculations, I just felt so hopeless. But then I decided to go to office hours one day and it was an epiphany. Ever since that first office hour that I went to every single office hour I could because I learned so much. All of my questions were answered and I just learned so much more about chemistry on a deeper level than I wouldn't have if I didn't go to those office hours or if I didn't ask TAs for help. It's not worth failing because you have too much pride or because you think you can do it all by yourself. It's not worth failing at all. Just go to office hours or ask for help. If you have a group of friends that are taking the same course as you, you guys can make a study group and you guys can work through the problems together because it does help to have a different perspective on how people solve problem sets. And my third point is burnout. Guys, burnout is so real. Contrary to what I just said about studying hard and making sure that you get the help that you need, there will come a time during finals or midterms where you're so stressed, you have so many classes to study for, you have this organizational system that you use to get through all of your classes, and then midterms come and you have 3 exams in 1 week and 2 of them are like 20% of your grade. You're going to be stressed, you're going to be overwhelmed. It's normal, it's natural, it sucks, it really does suck, but there are ways to prevent or lessen the stress that comes and also limit the chances of you being burnt out. I was so terrified of getting burnt out because I've heard all these stories of people who are burnt out and how it just made their grades plummet, and I just didn't want that to happen to me. So I did everything I could, but then spring semester came around and there was this really hard class. It was cellular and molecular biology, an intro class to CNM biology. The class was really insightful. I learned a lot, but it was such a hard class. I had to spend hours upon hours every day studying just to get a few concepts to stick. I focused all of my time studying for this one exam because I didn't want to fail it at all. I just wanted a really good grade. Oh, and mind you, I did have 2 jobs during this time. One of them is a customer service job and another one was a job at a lab that I just got into that spring semester. So I was really trying my best to like balance 2 jobs and school. I'm never going to do that again. Don't do it. I did it, I succeeded, but I did burn out in the end and it's just not worth it. So let me tell you my little story about this CNM intro biology class that I took. I was so stressed about this one test because the very first test I didn't do that well on, and the second test I was so dedicated on doing the best I could. So what I would do, the class started at 10, I'd wake up at 8, eat breakfast for like 30 minutes. From 8 until my class started, I'd study in the library like right next to my class. Then I'd go to class. Then I had other classes throughout the day, but while I was in those other classes, I was still studying for the same test. So whenever I had breaks, I would study. Lunch, study. Dinner, study. Within other classes, I would study. Before bed, I would study. When I was at work, I would study. I spent an entire week before the actual test just studying, and then the day of the test, I studied more. And while in the end, I did get an amazing grade, afterwards, I was so exhausted. Not only was I studying a lot, it was mandatory that I worked at the lab for at least 10 hours. While I was able to get the grade I wanted, and while I was able to, I guess you can say, balance it, I was so exhausted. I didn't talk to my friends that entire week. I was so miserable. I had massive migraines for a week after because of how stressed I was. That is just to show it's never that serious. An exam is never serious enough that you have to risk your health, both mental and physical, just to pass this class. Here's my advice for you. Take breaks. When you're studying, take breaks in general. I can study for like very long hours, very long periods of time. So I can study for, if I say I'm going to study for 8 hours, I will probably study for the whole 8 hours. If you feel tired, take a break. If your body's shutting down, go to bed. If your stomach is growling, eat. There's no point sacrificing your health for a grade. And I would also advise you to block out at least one day, maybe a Saturday or a Sunday or whatever. Block out at least one day in your entire week where you do absolutely nothing. On that day, you can rest, you can just rejuvenate, relax, take care of yourself, focus on yourself. You are the one who got into this college. You're the one who's taking the classes, you're the one who's studying hard, you're the one who's living through these experiences. There's no point in degrading yourself because you think you're not doing as well as others are. Moving on from academics, I'm going to talk about social life for a little bit. When you're a freshman, you have no one but yourself. After your parents leave, you're probably going to be really scared and lonely. So here are just some tips I have about social life in college and how I was able to ground myself socially without feeling alone. So my first point, participate in NSOP. I don't know if it's called NSOP at other colleges. Essentially, all the freshmen gather. I think it's around a week or a few days before all the other upperclassmen move in. There are just like many opportunities to socialize. After you move in, you're tired, you're stressed, you're exhausted, you're overwhelmed by this new environment, all these new people that are around you. Maybe you have roommates, maybe you don't, whatever, you're probably just stressed out. Still, regardless, participate in all of these activities that they have for you. Go to a few meetings. You have to go to every single one, but do go to the few that are required or necessary to integrate into college life. Once NSOP's over, if you don't participate in NSOP, you have no friends going into your courses, your classes, whatever it may be. In my experience, I was on survival mode during NSOP. I'm an introvert. I struggle with talking to people in general, but I'm also very introverted. And I just remember like forcing myself to go out of my comfort zone and just talk to whoever was there. I met like 2 people on this excursion and it was so much fun. We just like hung out with each other the entire time. We talked about random stuff. I can't even remember what we talked about. We just talked about the most random things. And she invited me to brunch like the next day with all of her other friends and I got to meet them. And one of those friends that I met, I'm still friends with her now. Don't be scared of being perceived negatively. No matter what you do, you could be the kindest, most perfect, most generous person in the world. People will perceive you negatively no matter what you do. That's not your fault. You shouldn't feel like that's your fault. It is scary still. I'm still working on my social skills as well. That kind of ties into my next point about social life, which is when you meet these people, it's okay if you don't stay like best friends with them. It's not something that you should worry about because friends do come and go, and I feel like freshman year you make a lot of like acquaintances, but it takes a long time to build very strong relationships. Also, build connections with people who are good for you. Build connections with people who will uplift you and not just put you down. If you do value those connections with the people that you meet during NSOP, get their phone number, get their Instagram, get whatever you need to get from them. Invite them out to breakfast, invite them to lunch or dinner. It's really important to have friends. It's really important to have a social life. It's okay if you don't have a million friends, just one or two are fine. You may not even meet your best friend until you're in junior year, for example. So don't stress out too much about making friends, but still to try to build strong connections with people that you value in your life, because that's the most important, that you have people in your life that will support you, motivate you, and help you push through the struggles that come with being a college student. And my last point is to join clubs and organizations on your campus. I was going to put this point in academics, but I felt like it was more important for socials, specifically because there will be affinity groups such as cultural groups or pre-major groups, you know? For example, my uni has an ASA, African Student Association. I have never felt more at home with those people. And not only do these clubs and organizations help you feel more at home and feel more aligned with your college, they also help you fill in the gaps that you may have in your schedules. For example, let's say you have 2 classes on Monday, and then after those 2 classes, you just have nothing else to do. Well, it is nice to have a lot of free time to do other things like studying. It's also nice to have things to do aside from just studying and going to class or going to work. And that leads me to my last point, finances. Balancing your finances is so important in college, especially as a freshman, because this will be your foundation for the future. I'm not going to get into the logistics of finances because I'm not that knowledgeable in the field. I don't really enjoy economics in general, but it's still really important that you understand how finances work if you haven't been taught already. My first point for finances, be frugal. You don't have to spend money to enjoy college. College has free events. At least my college, we have a free event like every single week, at least one. Like, your college will have so many free events that you can join throughout your school years and your years being there. And not only that, but let's say you live in a big city like I do, New York City, an expensive city. Despite it being expensive, it's so easy to find free or like really cheap events in the city. They don't even have to be actual events. You can just walk around, hang out with friends, go sightseeing. Like, you don't actually have to pay money to make all these fun experiences. Living within your means is going to be your goal to staying financially smart and independent. You don't want to spend so much that you're constantly struggling or that you're constantly seeking more money so you can spend even more money. I'm speaking for those who may feel like they need to spend money to have fun. You don't need to spend money at all to have fun. Focus on enjoying yourself within your means. I find this point very important. Don't try to appease others that are more fortunate than you just for the sake of not being perceived negatively. Don't spend more than you actually can just so that people don't think, oh, she doesn't have enough money for this. If you're attempting to appease people by spending a lot of money just so that they don't judge you negatively, you're probably not hanging around the right people, because the right people will not perceive you negatively just for you being frugal. My second tip is to get a job or do some type of work that can earn you a little bit of cash in your pockets. I'm not saying that you should feel forced to support yourself throughout all of college. I know that there are some people that are within those circumstances where they need to work to support themselves throughout college. But once again, I am speaking for a certain population of people who don't need to work for college, but they also aren't being supported by anyone but themselves throughout college. Getting a job during college is very important in my opinion. It builds a foundation for your future. Any future jobs that you may want, they're probably going to ask you, do you have any prior experience? And if you do, you're like, hell yeah, I have a prior experience. I did this and this and this. It'll look really good for that one purpose, but also you gain a lot of skills in a variety of desired fields. So like I said, I did customer service. I'm still doing customer service. I worked at a lab. I also worked at the same lab during the summer. And then my very last tip for finances is to save, save, save. Saving is going to be your best friend. People say to save 20% of your income into your savings account. When I first started working, I actually saved 90% of my income into my savings simply because I didn't have to pay for food, I didn't have to pay for rent. All I had to pay for was my phone bill, which is like $60. Save up as much as you can, make these financial goals for yourself, and start building up your financial portfolio. If you don't have a credit card or debit card, get those, get a savings account. Once you start working, you can actually start to learn more about all these vast financial opportunities. It's going to be very helpful for your future when, let's say, you want to buy a house in the future. Don't be intimidated by the fact that maybe others have everything figured out and you're just starting. Everyone's journey is different. Your journey is going to be different. Just because you're starting late doesn't mean that you're going to end last. The most important part is that you started. The next thing to do is get the ball rolling. That includes all of my advice for you guys. Let me know down in the comments if any of this advice helped you and how you're feeling about college if this is your first year. And stay tuned for college content. I'm very excited to make more of that. If you've made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!